Hello guys, welcome back. This is a continuation series of forms and validations in React. In this session, we will discuss about form validations along with a practical exposure which is a real time. Basically, a form validation is a process of checking that the values in your form inputs are valid as per expected implementation or not. A validation rules need some following things to be cross-checked when a user clicks over a submit button. Generally, when we talk about validations, we have client-side validations and server-side validations. The moment we talk about this React form-side validations, we check that what field is being validated, what function should be invoked to check if it is valid or if it is not valid even, what the function should return when the field is valid, otherwise if it is invalid it will return the error message, what message should be displayed if the field is not valid or invalid. Once all these properties are to be checked, with each and every input element or a HTML field where the form has to be validated that comes under the form element. Each field has a type, method, when to validate and a specific message or a error message that has to be printed to the end user. Let's practically demonstrate this form validations. As discussed in the earlier demonstrations, we have a core application where app.js has an app component which is my root component rendered from my entry point app. I would like to demonstrate my React form validation in this component only. To design a form in this demonstration, I'll be focusing with the Bootstrap form which is highly responsive. To check the Bootstrap components and the validations classes, we require to switch to the browser to get the Bootstrap links so that I can make my application more responsive. To take the links, we need to go to the official website getbootstrap.com. You can directly download the Bootstrap library or you can take the CDN links as well. Once I click over a get started, I'll take all the components to be rendered from here as well. To design the application with the CSS library, I require the following links. I'll just take this link. If you have downloaded your Bootstrap with npm package, you need to use only reference path or a href path for the JS. Otherwise, you can directly go to your index.html, which is your public repository, and here you can add your links. You know that we do not require cross-origin and integrity properties for any CSS and JS in the Bootstrap as of now. The link has to be pasted over a head section and the JS part has to be pasted over the body section. So I'll quickly copy this entire JavaScript. 3 JavaScripts are required to configure, and although the cross origin and integrity is also not required as of now in my local host, so I'll quickly remove them. Now if I need to check whether my CSS links are successfully pasted or not, or my application can be responsive with these classes or not, I can go to the app.js and I can use any specific class to cross verify whether classes from the Bootstrap libraries are responding or not. I can create a button where I can keep adding a class. As I discussed that in React, the class property is replaced with the class name because class itself is a keyword. I'll keep a class name btn success. Success means the button will be displayed in the green color. I'll just use this class and I'll check if it is responding well. it means my CSS is successfully enabled in my application. Further, we can switch to our Get Bootstrap, where when we click over Get Started, we have the components. Out of these components, I can switch to forms and I can take the form classes from here. To design my React form, I'm just taking this basic form classes or an entire form element. I'll just copy this and keep this into my React component. There would be some changes to be implemented. The first change is, as it returns the JSX, in JSX we cannot have any open tag. Input tag also needs to be closed as a self-enclosed tag. Similarly, we have two input tags. We need to close them using self-enclosed tag. And further, we also require to set the third checkbox that has to be self-enclosed. Generally in HTML, these tags never to be all time closed. They are self-enclosed tags or empty tags that can skip to be enclosed. But in JSX, every time you need to close your tags. Once you have just pasted this form element entirely, I can just see how my entire forms looks like. To maintain this form integrity more better, I can use some add-on classes. I can use a class name which is container. It makes the padding from all the sides. And I can make one more div which has a class row, so that if we have multiple rows in my one JSX, I can keep them separated. This has to be closed here. So when I see my JSX now, my form looks like padded from all the sides and coming as a row. So whatever you write outside the row will come to this area, not this particular area. I can further make some column wise track, but I'm not doing that. I'm just making two breakpoints to make a gap from top. This is something how my application looks like. If it is not coming with this BR, I can simply make div with NBSP. If you want more space, you can also create some CSS classes where you can include some paddings and all, and you can make them possible. After that, you can design your form as per your expectation. For example, I want some properties in my form, but before that, I would like to create one H2 element inside the form, where I'll just say create your account. Post that, I'm going to remove two form groups. In one of the form group, I'll take first name. I'll change the name with first name. The type is text. Afterwards, I require a one type property for the input. Another is a class property. Further that, the name property. I'll keep this name first name. Arial is not required. If you want a placeholder, you can keep it over here with your modified placeholder, enter name or enter first name. After that, we also require onChange event for validated fields or for controlled form elements. I'll later modify this. Place the no validate so that it will not validate from the HTML validation. It will validate from the React, and small help is also not required. Along with that, in your form element, you require to set this as no validate. For the same reason, it should not validate from HTML5. It will be validated from the React validations. Similarly, I require one more form group for last name. I'll just change this for property. Please consider this form element. I discussed earlier the class is being replaced with class name and 4 is being replaced with HTML4. because for itself is a keyword for loopings. Just copy and paste it with this last name and change wherever you have class with the class name. Class name, as well as here you need to change the class with class, right? Further, if you need any other properties, I'm just taking 2 more properties to complete my form. The third property is email. Name is also email. Enter email ID. Also change the placeholder for this last name and the name property for this last name. And the fourth property is the password. Change the label, HTML4 property, the name property of input element, and the placeholder. Afterwards, I require a button. You can also keep this button in form group class or a category. This is also one of the type of field in the form. And here I am keeping a submit button with the primary, and I'm just changing the button text with create account. I'm just making a small help. If you want, you can keep it. Otherwise, you can just leave the create account only. Already have account, then click here. And you can further create a login link for this. After that, it is saying that there is no on change associated with any expression. You must have an handler for this on change. I'm just keeping here this dot handle change for all of the field. This dot handle change for the first name and the last name as well. Later we don't have handle change. So once I'll create the handler for this input element, it will implement it accordingly. So you can see that my 4 elements are there: first name, last name, email, and password. For the first name, the class is not considered because it's something which is misspelled for the class name. And here I can see that I'm having 4 properties. It's now not looks like perfect here. So I'm just going to remove this already have an account. As of now, once I'll having login access, I'll add. Afterwards, we will try to validate all these fields. As of now, we have this form or a React form with a responsive bootstrap, elements, or a component. I hope you really understand this concept. Until next time, stay tuned. Thank you so much. Hello guys, welcome back. This is a continuation series of forms and validations. We have discussed till form creation in React. So once this form is successfully created, we need to further make some validations in this. I'm going to create a constructor in my component. In this constructor, I require a state which will validate my form. In my form, I'm having further elements. The first property is first name, initially null. The second property is last name, which is also initially null. The third property is email, which is also null. The fourth property is password, which is null. After that, I need to validate the form errors on which particular element I am having the errors. I require an object which has all these properties sequentially. First name, which is empty. Last name, which is also empty because of string. All these 4 are strings. Email is also empty. And password is also empty. Right? After that, I have a submit button in this form element. I'll raise a handler for that button. The moment user will click over that button, at that moment, I'll check whether my all form fields are validated or not. For that perspective, I'll check if form valid, which is not a field as of now I'm having, has a this.state.form errors. If it is true, then console.log print the entire object. This dot state dot first name, and if you want all the fields to be printed in your console, what you can do is you can use the apostrophe to split the statements in multi-line and say submitting what are the fields that you have. First name, this dot state dot first name, last name, this dot state dot last name, email, this dot state dot email, and along with that I also have password. Although these statements, these fields are never to be printed over the console, I'm just printing it for the verification whether the data has successfully posted on this button click or not, right? You can use this event handler with prevent default, right? After that, you can see that it is giving us two errors. Handle submit is not defined and form validate is not defined that we have used. So let's print this form validate first. Just before this class, I'm going to create one form validate which will work on the basis of form errors. I have a valid property initially set to true. I set object.values. Iterate all the values from form errors that I have in the state with all the properties using for each loop. One by one iterate with the fields in the form errors and check the length of each field. Val.length, if it is greater than 0 and validate is assigned with false, then return true. Return the value of validate. If this validate will return true, then it will print the entire if over the console. Otherwise, if it will return the false, then this if condition will evaluate to false. Then it will go and print the else part, where I am printing that console.error form invalid, right? Now the next is handle submit is invalid. Handle submit is never used in my entire form. Let me first use with my form element. When I have this form element, I would like to check that once the submit button will be clicked over this form, on submit of that button, I'm supposed to call this handler, this dot handle submit, right? But now I'm having this form and the functionality that will cross-check the fields values over the submit button. But as I discussed that we are doing a controlled elements, controlled values to be checked. Somewhere I am printing class in the entire app.js I need to check. So when I click over a create account, it is going to be printed the submit values which are set to none. Because we are not changing their values with this handle change event. So whenever you will hit any value or a target value to change with this any particular element out of this, it will check their values and will maintain the state of that. So for further that implementation, I need to create one more handle change event. So just after this particular handle submit, I'm going to create an handle change. Here I'm going to create one const, a pair of two properties, name and value, that will be achieved from the target value to be changed when this event is called, when any hit is implemented over an element. Then I'll create a form errors variable, local variable, that will keep the state of form errors that I am having in my construct state part. Afterwards, I'll create a switch cases in which I'll pass the name of the element, first name, last name. If the case is first name. Please check the name property before writing these cases, it's case sensitive. Then form errors, which is a current variable, dot first name as assigned by the value dot length if it is less than 3 and value dot length if it is greater than 0, then it will print minimum 3 characters are required. Minimum 3 characters are required. Otherwise, it will keep this field as an empty, right? Put a break after that. Similarly, check for last name. In the last name also, I'm checking for 3 characters. In email, I'm also checking for 3 characters as of now. This is last name, this is email, and this is password. For the password, I am putting a restriction of having 6 characters in the password as of now. Once these switch are designed perfectly, I just require a default where I don't want to print any message as of now because I'm maintaining the messages in my handle submit already. I just would like to break. After that, I'll also put a regular expression for my email that my email has to be verified successfully. For that purpose, I'm going to create one email regex const variable, const email regular expression, where I'll check for the regular expression that my email has to be verified, valid email ID. So I'm writing in regular expression here to evaluate that my entire email has to be valid along with the domain name. Bit hard to write down the pattern to avoid any error. This is a common regular expression. You can take it from anywhere. Once this email regex is prepared, I can just simply call this email regex from the switch where the email is validated. From here, I can check rather printing the length. I just want to check the regular expression. Dot test is a method and just pass the value of the target value of the email property in this test method. If it is true, then don't print anything. Otherwise, in the else part, print invalid email address, right? Also, to trace the errors, I'm going to print this name and the value before the switch case is evaluated. What values I'm having in each field. Console.log, name of the field and the value of the field and the value of the field, right? So this is our form. Let me check. Somewhere in this app.js, I'm having this class instead of class name. This is our HTML part. We have class name, I guess. We haven't changed it. Right. So this btn primary is having the class. Now, you can see that this is your form. And this form is designed by a controlled form. So whenever you will hit any change into any particular field in this form, this is actually going to hit your console. How? Because you have associated an on change event, that is handle change. And in this handle change, you are taking the target of each element with the name and the value, and you are keeping the constructor form errors, which is by default null in this form error. I wanted to print the name and value, and when the name and value is changed, you are actually checking from the switch case if the length from this value is less than 3 or greater than 0, then print this error message. Simultaneously for the last name as well as email address as well as and password also. You can see that whenever you are hitting to any element, because of the controlled input, it is going to change the state over this click, over this change. I also wanted to print this change just after this break or a switch case. I said this dot set state. In this state, you have form errors. In this form errors, with respective value has to be assigned to each name, and also associate an anonymous function or a function call where I just wanted to print what values I'm having in my state, which is this dot state, right? So when you are going to make any change in your element, it is printing the entire state. That first name is A, last name is null, and when you are going to expand this, you can see that in the form errors we have all the error messages. For the first name, you have touched this element and this element does not meet the requirement that we have associated in the switch case. It is printing the error or assigning the error to the form errors. Similarly, when you are writing anything to the last name and you are touching that field, it is associating the last name error also. You can see here minimum 3 errors for the first name and for the last name. For the email ID, it will print that it is not valid. Let me just expand this and check this onto. You can just expand this and see I'm having 3 errors. First name and last name, it is not printing email. Let me just switch to the next element and just check for the password also. So it is printing all the errors, right? But it is not printing for the email because it's not valid, right? Something that has to be changed. So to rectify this invalid email address, you can just switch the message, right? So when you are hitting your email address, in that case, it is also checking whether the email ID is valid or not. Just expand this object and see it's printing the error for email address, that email ID is not valid. Later, if you would wish to print the entire messages or error messages along with the field, then go to the render button and associate a form errors object that has been assigned from this dot state. Using this form errors, I would like to check before printing the message that if form errors dot first name dot length is greater than 0 and print the span message, span, just keep it in the next line, and in the span use a class name, whichever class name you want, any error message or something, and just without using the class name I'm using right now, and print it form errors dot first name error that we have. That first name is not having 3 characters or something. Similarly, I can associate this form error with last name, where I'll change the property name only along with the email address and the password. After that, once you will check from the browser, once I hit any property, it will print the respective error message along with the field only. Now the next is, if you would like to wish to print this error over this invalid color, which is red in color, we have already associated the Bootstrap library in our application. I can simply associate the particular class in our class name form control, that if the length property is not validated, in that case, keep this class as an expression, allocate this form control class along with the invalid class also. So form control, now to check the expression, I use this expression handler with dollar operator, form errors dot last name dot length greater than 0, sorry, less than 0. Then there is Invalid is invalid class. CSS class in Bootstrap is there to print the error red in color or invalid for green. Otherwise print null. So when I switch back to my application, it is saying that two expression ends I have implemented, and also there is apostrophe missing. This apostrophe has to be ends up after the expression only, and then for my outer one. So when I switch to my application, I have implemented it for the last name to show the invalid property. So I can see that this entire text box looks red in color because it's not matched with the requirement. Once it matched with the requirement, it comes with primary, which is blue. You can also associate this class for first name, for email ID, and as well as for password. So I can show you for first name also and last name. This is end-to-end implementation of your form, React forms and the validations along with that, where I have implemented the CSS Bootstrap to make your forms responsive, along with the form associated with the controlled values that has to be changed over a particular hit, which is on handle change, and along with the implementation of the switches and the expression as well. I hope you really enjoyed this session. Until next time, stay tuned. Thank you so much.